This is the final word story time. 242. We're into season 19. It's unusual for us to do a story time at the start of a season before a weekly show. We've already done a daily show before a story time. So we're all out of whack, but in all the right ways.
We're
I'm
all
Adam
out of
Collins.
love, as Anastasia would have said.
Indeed. I'm Adam Collins. He's Jeff Lemon, who just jumped in there. I'm in London. He's in Lisbon. Like to set up where we are each episode because it's been a bit of a rolling maul in recent times. And we are,
end of season. Be even more so in the next few months.
Yeah, end of season vibes here. I went to the Surrey end of season awards last night, which was it's kind of that thing where you get your tux out in April, you get it out again in October in cricket circles over in the UK. So that was fun. Jeff, there was an MC who was doing the night who clearly had never heard of cricket before, or if they have heard of cricket, it was still a relatively new concept to them. It was more hard to describe the bit they were trying to do. It was a bit. There was a bit there somewhere. I'm not sure what exactly. And Matt Fisher won, was it the Players Player of the Year award or something like an award voted on by the players, best clubman or best team or something like that.
Right.
And he gets up and gives a really nice, set of remarks. He's quite a humble guy, Matt Fisher. He's obviously had a big week. He's been picked for the Lions squad again and all this sort of stuff. And he goes, I just want to dedicate this award to the team and to everyone here who got me here. But Stewie, if you told me this guy was going to MC the end of season awards, I would have stayed at Yorkshire. That was how he ended his speech and walked off with that. It was a perfectly delivered line from Matt Fisher at the end of a really wholesome and lovely speech. So that's what I've been doing. I got a message before, by the way, from an old mate of ours from Melbourne who used to do White Line Wireless with us, Daniel Paproth, Pappy, who over the years has been a great supporter of ours. He, about a year or two ago, worked out the number of test runs made per Australian Prime Minister and worked out who was the most productive batter in each Prime Ministership. Great bit of work. We mentioned it on Storytime. He's done it for the bowlers, and then he sent me a screenshot and cut off the key information. So I was desperate to tell you all about that. It's entirely possible I'll get a reply from him while we're recording and I'll feed it in. But that seems to me like a very worthwhile use of time. Let's work out which bowler marries up best with each Prime Minister. From memory, it was the one I liked the most was that the most number of runs made when Bob Hawke was Prime Minister was Dean Jones, I'm pretty sure. And I think, which, stood out as there's that nice photo of them, isn't there, that Phil Brown took on the balcony at Lords in 1989 that we've talked about on the show before. So anyway, a bit of miscellanea.
Was John Howard Steve Waugh? That feels like a natural link.
Yeah, it could be. 96 to 2007, you would think it's Steve Waugh, although it could easily be Ricky Ponting.
Yeah.
Because Ponting by 2007, he was still...
Well, he has his huge years in 03, 04, that sort of...
05 is his biggest year, isn't it, in terms of runs scored, I think?
And I think it's... Well, 03 and 4 is where he's got that West Indies tour where he has the massive one where he makes all the doubles. He's got the Border Gavaskar. Coincidentally, this is story time number 242. Ricky Ponting makes 242 at Adelaide Oval in one of the great test matches where Dravid makes a double hundred as well. Little pin in that for the show. He might come up again later too. So, yeah, it probably is Ponting. He's got a more, he doesn't really get going until 2001, I guess.
Yeah, it's 2001 is the moment in time for Ricky Ponting. I remember on the old Victor Trumper cricket board, Jeff, someone diligently charting the rise of Ricky Ponting's batting average from about 40. It might have even been 39 because he gets 100 at Leeds in 01. Is that right? Leeds? I think the losing test match Ponting from that point forward, and how consistently it ratcheted up to 60. It was like there was no diversion. There was no slumps after that. It was just consistently, diligently chipping away series by series until for a time there he was averaging 60. And it's kind of sad that he didn't end up having an average with a 6 in front of it to reflect what a player he was, but I'm sure it doesn't bother him too much given he hit, 41 test hundreds, so he went okay. He went okay, Ricky Ponting.
I reckon it's 2004, isn't it, that West Indies tour? I think that's where he goes over 60 from memory.
Right.
Someone can correct me.
That's about right. Yeah, it's about a 3 or 4 year period when he was basically averaging 80. Just staggering purple patch, a bit like Steve Smith's purple patch, where for 6 years he had a batting average of 675 collectively or something absurd. So anyway, that's the fun stuff that we get a chance to spread on, the numbers of the game and all of that. So
that's what we're going to do. Let's do it. Let's play Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge. I've got my balcony window open so I can do that as loud as I want. Nerd Pledge is the game, the accidental game that we discovered while doing the final word, where people were sending in amounts of currency to support the show, and they started sending in modified ones that were not the normal amounts of currency, because those numbers would relate to cricket. And then we had to figure out what the number meant, and on it went until that has become the major way that the show is supported by people on Patreon, patreon.com/the final word. If you want to join up, like David Smith, who sent through $5.80 in Australian currency, and it has a clue.
It does. David says here that he'd revised his number to 580, and the clue here, ignore the zero, so we're looking at 58. It's a season tally that should have led to one more trip. Thank you, David. Thank you to all our patrons, many of whom I've been in communication with over the last few days, to thank them all for being with us. And that means so much when we're sort of embarking upon a new season from 18 to 19. And it's more than the foundation of the show. It's so much more than that, what Patreon constitutes to us, as far as being able to make this show around the year, around the world, on our terms, independently, flexibly, and so on. So thank you to everyone who is a patron, and charge us towards 974 before that first ball is bowled. 50 days from now, whatever it is. I saw a press release today at Perth, which is our goal. Anyway, that's the preamble to the show. David Smith is the first number, and Jeff's going to solve it.
Let's do it. I'm going to attempt it, but I might get it wrong. I'll just say that out of the gate. So it's a running joke. It's been a running joke between you and me for years, Adam. And then as we brought on a few other friends to help us try to solve some of the numbers that were more difficult, became a running joke amongst that conversation, that little sleuth group as well. Pleasure error is the gag, where we want the number to be something else. And we say, well, this person sent us this number, but gee, it'd be a whole lot easier if it was a slightly different number, because I've got a good answer for that. And I wish that it were the case. Now, this might be a real one, okay? This might be one that actually fits, because let's go through the clue. Season tally, it has to be wickets, unless it's wicket-keeping dismissals, right? 58, I think. It's not going to be anything to do with runs in a season, because it's a season that went well, so it can't be someone who had a bad season and made 58 runs. No one could make like 58 half centuries or something like that in a season. It's got to be wickets, and I feel that it has to be an Australian season or a Southern Hemisphere season, because 58 in an English season wouldn't be that great. It'd be an okay.
No,
it'd be good, but it wouldn't be topping the pops.
Yeah, these days, if you take 58 wickets, you've had an outstanding season, and that's sort of reflected in the way in which they picked like the Lions squad, for instance. 50 wickets is rare air. Of course, it was 100 wickets was the standard basis for just for having had a good year, but as the number of games has diminished and all the rest of it. But yeah, 58, it would take. I mean, I suppose if someone sent a pledge in 10 years' time, and they were referring to someone's season from 2021 where they took 58 wickets, that would be worthy. But I don't think it's going to quite meet the criteria for you, especially given it's in Australian dollars.
And I reckon even in, say, the 90s, when there were a lot more tour games and that sort of thing, if someone had a great season, they'd be taking 80 wickets, something like that. They might not be taking 100, but they'd be taking more than 58. But a Sheffield Shield season, 58 is right up there with the best that you could ever do, right? So
what did Funky get? Funky got
67.
67, yeah. And when he broke the record, which is stood for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
58 is, when you consider the record was 67, 58's punchy.
Yeah. So, well, I'll come to that momentarily. So it's in AED as well, which makes it seem like it should be an Australian number. It needs to be a player who had an international career before this point and then didn't have one afterwards, because, should have led to one more trip, must have had previous tours, didn't get another tour. And I'm thinking that in terms of like formative numbers, there are numbers, when you're a cricket nuffy, you get numbers that lodge in your head, and then you carry them around in your head for the next 20 or 30 years, and you tell them to people at pubs when you're too loose to have this conversation, and you run those numbers over and over, and sometimes those numbers drift a little bit. Like sometimes you just slightly misremember it. There's something like I would go, Ricky Ponting made 11 runs in the Border-Gavaskar series in 2001, in the great series in India. That's a number that's in my head, and I'm pretty sure that's right, but it could be 13 or it could be 9. Like, it's the kind of thing where you could lose grip. You could just repeat it often enough that you think it's right.
Yeah, as Godwin Gretsch once said, my recollection might be faulty.
Might be faulty.
My recollection might be faulty, but I think that there was an email where the Prime Minister was asked to provide favourable treatment to whatever his name was now. I should remember. It was probably the best week of my life at Gate. In a way, it's a sad thing to say, but like it's the truth. It's one of, if not the best weeks of my life, and it culminates in, and this didn't make it a great week, although I have no strong views either way, in Michael Jackson's death, which killed the media cycle and meant that we had won emphatically, and Malcolm Turnbull lost the leadership 3 months later for believing in the fake email that Godwin Gretsch supplied to Erica Betts and all of that. They're happy times. We'll tell that story another time. Prompt me another time to tell you the story of Gate and my involvement in that magical week, but not today. We'll just say my recollection might be faulty.
I just enjoyed. I don't have strong views either way on Michael Jackson popping off.
I probably should
good
have
or bad thing.
Probably should have strong views on it. It was the day when the Today Show they go, oh gee, there's another shocker coming in here. Yeah, Michael Jackson, like Jeff Goldblum's died as well, and that was bad information.
Not true.
Yeah, I think that was the great man Richard. Oh, I don't want to besmirch him. That might have been the great man Richard Wilkins. Who eventually got recognised in the Queen's Birthday Honours. I always argued that he should have been recognised way earlier for his involvement in the 2007 election campaign when Steve Price went on radio and said that, Peter Garrett told me in an airport lounge that if Kevin Rudd gets elected, then it's going to change everything. Then it's going to change everything. And Steve Price going for it and all of the usual ferals jumping in behind it. And that the other person in that conversation in the airport lounge was Richard Wilkins. And Richard Wilkins confirmed Peter Garrett's version of events, that was a short, jocular conversation. There's words I'll never forget. That it was a joke from Garrett to Steve Price that if Rudd won, they change everything. Wilkins told the truth, backed in Garrett, made sure the news cycle was killed, and made sure that Steve Price's reputation was damaged yet further.
Well, it's hard to damage it much more than what he was able to do to himself. But yeah, and it's weird the way Michael Jackson's reputation has kind of been laundered. Like people are just fine with it. They're like, well, he was good at dancing and singing. So some other stuff in there too. Yeah. Right. Where were we? 58 wickets in a season.
58 wickets in a season.
In a Sheffield Shield season. And the reason I'm hoping Pledger error for this is that nobody's taken 58 wickets in a Shield season. But in 99-2000, Paul Rifle took 59 wickets in a Shield season. This is peak Pura Cup days. This is where Victoria made back-to-back finals in 2000, 2001. The trophy's been renamed. The Sheffield Shield is the Pura, the Milk Cup. Victoria finally win it in 2004. Rifle's gone by then, but he's in the thick of it in that 99 and 2000 sort of era. And in terms of the number of wickets in a season, only 6 players have ever taken more in a season than that 59. So he's right up there in terms of wickets. But it's an interesting season because it's not crazy. He starts kind of slow burn, I think 4 wickets in the first game, has a couple of none for innings in his first couple of games, builds into it, but never takes 5 wickets in an innings until the final, right? So through the whole season, doesn't take a 5-for, doesn't have a 10-wicket match. There's no massive bag through that whole season. So of the 6 players ahead of him for Sheffield Shield wickets in a season, Chuck Fleetwood-Smith took 8 5-wicket bags. Chad Sayers and Colin Miller took 5 of them. So Rifle's got 1 for the whole season. But he takes a lot of 4s, takes 4 wickets in an innings on 9 different occasions, takes 3 wickets a bunch of times. So 8 in a match against Tassie, 8 in a match against Queensland, 7 in a match both times they play New South Wales. And then in the final, he takes 9 against Queensland with that first 5-wicket haul, although they don't get the win. It ends up as a draw, and Queensland get the title as the side that finish higher on the table.
Yeah, rain-affected draw, galling. This was the first of the 2 Stuart Law moments with Victoria, consecutive finals. Law makes a big 100. Rifle gets him eventually. But there was a...
Is that the catch, the Michael Klinger catch at Gully?
I can't remember. It was third slip. I can't remember if that was the Gully, if that was the... The Klinger incident was in 2001. In 2001, the next year when Victoria have not a lot to play with in the 4th innings and Law's caught / not caught.
Not given.
Not given, that's a better way of saying it. This was, I can't remember exactly what, but it was along the similar lines that there was a contentious moment, and Stuart Law goes on to become the player of the match for making a big 100, and Victoria, they don't do well with the bat, which, got to blame yourself. They don't, then Martin Love makes 100. the second time, and Law makes more runs, and yeah, that's it for Victoria. But yeah, Rifle had an amazing game as the visiting captain there at the Gabba.
So there's all of that. Like a couple of years earlier, when they're heading off to England for the Ashes, there's a lot of Victorian momentum about get Rifle in the squad. Rifle should be in the squad, which he's not at first, but he ends up being later.
Yeah, absolutely. So 97, that's the moment with Rifle. So when the I remember the TV news that night, like, to that extent, when Rifle's not named in the squad for the 97 Ashes initially, all hell breaks loose in the Victorian media. I remember Channel 10 went to town on it. They did a press conference with him at the Nets at the MCG. And they led the sports section with it. I wish that was somewhere. Can't remember who did the yard, but it was definitely Quartermain was hosting sport. But yeah, I think it's Paul Rifle and Bill Laurie who are giving grabs to the news that night. Laurie, chairman of selectors at Victoria still. I'm pretty sure he finished that year.
Mm-hmm.
And what a disgrace it was that Rifle wasn't picked to go to England, where he'd done
so
well in 93. And then, yeah, of course, Rifle does end up going because Andy Pickle gets hurt, and he does well when plays in 97. And he becomes a bit of an England specialist as well, because they decided to kind of vault him back into the squad for the 99 World Cup, of course, in England, which is where he retired from international cricket after that Lord's final.
But I reckon there's some feeling that's similar to this through 99 and especially early 2000 towards the end of that Sheffield Shield campaign, because Rifle's captaining Victoria. He's got that job of seniority. He's taking wickets every time they play. And Australia have a test tour coming up to New Zealand in March. They're going in the second half of March, like right towards the end of the season. So the first test happens just before the Sheffield Shield final, but the second and third tests are after the Shield final. And I remember there being this hometown momentum, this Melbourne sort of angst saying, well, fucking Paul Rifle should be picked. They should send him because Gillespie's out, right? Gillespie's broken the leg in Sri Lanka, so he's nowhere near the team.
Yeah, the only issue that Rifle, he'd retired, so it was a moot point, but the issue was that Brett Lee had really arrived, and he played in that series in New Zealand. And I think the combination of Miller, Lee, McGrath, and Rifle, Warren rather, was the attack. And that's where Martin gets back. So they've made one structural change in the top six. But yeah, that's where Miller got the chance to do, what every cricketer's dream is: take the new ball, bowl seam up, and then when it got a bit older, bowl in tandem with Shane Warne bowling spin. It was a dream for Colin Miller to have that flexibility through that New Zealand series.
Yeah, but that's sort of the bizarreness though, because Australian sides around that time picked three quicks, and so if you're thinking in Australian sort of terms, in conventional terms, you're thinking, well, there's a spot in that team. Gillespie's not there. You've got Lee and McGrath, so it should be Paul Rifle. That was I feel like there was a sense of that, of people wanting that to happen at the time, wanting the dream to be real, to go on one more trip, to go to New Zealand, to take a few bags over there. And it does end up being, as you say, that quite strange situation where Colin Miller is there, where, that must be the last time Australia picked two spinners effectively, like bowling a bit of seam up, notwithstanding, for a series that's not in Asia, who play the whole series. Like they play all three tests. Miller and Warne in tandem play all three tests. And I can't think of a time when that would have happened in any non-Asian matches after that.
Yeah, that's probably fair. They played Miller in the next summer in 2000, 2001 when the Windies were there. We played with McGill. So they did go to that configuration again, Sydney, Adelaide.
Melbourne. Miller played in Melbourne.
The New Year's blue hair and all of that. But yeah, in terms of a whole series, because of course they had the option to do it in 2005 and elected not to, which we talked about before about McGill was such an informed cricketer at that point of his career that he would have balanced the probability. He would have had more of a chance of doing well than whoever they picked as the third seamer, with Gillespie just tapering off and Kashpovich, for whatever reason, not quite working in the tests that he played. And
and then Sean Tate coming in and not being used basically by Ponting and so on, where a second spinner might have been the go. But yeah, it's just not the way that Australian selectors generally set teams up. So it does stand out that if you were a massive Paul Rifle stan, you'd be at home saying, well, he should be in that third spot. Either way, it doesn't matter because, Australia whitewashed the series. They're pretty comfortable in most of those games. There's a close-ish one I remember listening to on the radio at the time, but they're pretty comfortable, pretty comprehensive for the most part. And that's Miller's, that's the year when Miller wins the Test Player of the Year award that year 2000 that he has 26 wickets at 19 in the year. He takes 12 at 25 in that New Zealand series. And he's part of a bowling group that don't concede more than 300 in any of the 6 innings in that series. But all of it lines up for me. All of it fits for me, except for the fact that the number is 59 and not 58. And I'm just hoping that maybe David's recollection of that has wavered ever so slightly. Or, David, you can tell me I'm wrong and we can start over.
I wonder if it's a player who took 58 first-class wickets, not 58 Shield wickets. I wonder whether that's the wrinkle. It can't be this.
Well, they're the only games he played that season were Shield games. So.
No, I don't mean the rifle thing. I mean whether it's somebody else altogether who might have taken, say, 53 Shield wickets but picked up 5 in a tour game, which might have augmented the numbers another way. So it could be that.
True.
The thing with rifle has always stood out to me, and does in hindsight too, is that it was his. I mean, you would take right now a bowler who averages 26, 27 with the bat is gold dust.
Yeah.
And look, sure, it's easy. Easy is not the right word. It's easier when you're playing in a strong team, and rifle mostly played in strong Australian teams under Mark Taylor and a little bit under Steve Waugh. But he made his debut in 92 at the WACA, didn't he? So Alan Border was still a skipper then. But yeah, rifle, he's like this far away, an inch away from having a higher batting average and a bowling average when his bowling average was 26 and a half or something like that. So it's a reminder of just what an all-round package that he brought, and that I think always had a lot to do with why they wanted him in that World Cup squad in 99, and that decision that Steve Waugh made in England when he made the structural shift to bring back rifle and to bring back Moody, because he wanted the guys who'd played lots of cricket in England who knew the conditions. Moody, of course, having played so much for Worcestershire, and rifle on a couple of test tours, and it proved to be a brilliant decision because both go on to play in that winning World Cup team at Lords a month later.
I think that we should go to our break a little early. And I think before that, you should tell us about Maurice Blackburn, the number one plaintiff law firm in the Commonwealth of Australia. If you're somebody who needs a bit of assistance, if you're someone who needs a hand to find your way around the legal system because it's confusing, it's intimidating, it's expensive, Maurice Blackburn are the ones to talk to. A lot of their cases are no-win, no-fee. They can chat to you about your case and work out if that's going to fit for you. And they're the kind of people who are there to help you figure it out when you don't know how to get your way around that system.
Yeah, and take, for instance, the example of one of their lawyers, Jason, was working with a client who sustained catastrophic injuries after being run over by a forklift in a factory where he was working. And as a result of those traumatic injuries, it was unlikely he could be able to return to the workforce in a reliable way, on a reliable basis, I should say. So, with his whole future ahead of him, young family to care for, faced with the prospect of no income for the rest of his life. I mean, that's just about as daunting as it could get, really. But then Maurice Blackburn were able to help him locate his insurance through his super. So that's how it works when you've got the insurance captured in there within your superannuation. And after as it can be, I should say, and after a drawn out battle with the insurer, they always seem to be drawn out battles with insurers on this front. But that's why Maurice Blackburn are there. They were able to achieve a settlement of over $200,000, which gave him and his young family the peace of mind they needed at that horrible time. So another of the many examples where superannuation insurance is not only a vital thing to have, but to have someone on your side like Maurice Blackburn. As you said, Jeff, mostly on a no-win, no-fee basis. They've been our principal partner for a couple of seasons now. They will be again all the way through season 19 on all of the long shows that we bring to you, weekly shows, story time, interviews, book club, that type of thing. And I'm sure they'll be very present during the Ashes as well. So Maurice Blackburn Lawyers, Australia's number one plaintiff law firm. Outstanding to be in association with them for another season. And it would be remiss of me not to jump in at this point, Jeff, to say that if you feel like you also want to partner with the Final Word in this season, 19, but thinking ahead to the men's Ashes, which is going to be, I don't know, the biggest Ashes series since 2005. Like, it would be hard to mount an argument otherwise. It's going to be massive owing to the Brad's-Ball revolution and what this means for this particular Australian team. This is the time to get in touch with me, Adam at finalwordcricket.com. That you end up with sort of pride of place in those daily programs that you would know well. Of course, we're making them right now as part of the Women's World Cup, and we'll do so again for lots of other series. But, we all know how big the Ashes is going to be. Our numbers the last time these teams met in 2023 were absolutely astronomical. They will be again, I would be fairly confident in saying, So this is the time to work with us, Adam, at finalwordcricket.com. Let's have a chat. Let's work out what your brand or company are doing and how you can partner up with us and how we can make them part of the show's DNA, just like Maurice Blackburn Lawyers and just like a bunch of others who have been with us for years now. And we're proud of those associations, Jeff, because, we give it our all and we care a lot about the people we work with.
Have a chat with us, and we'll be back in just a second with part 2. It is the final word. It's story time 242. If you're somebody who's going to be doing a lot of traveling over the next little while, if you're in the UK and coming out to Australia for the Ashes, if you're in Australia and traveling elsewhere, if you're in one of those places, increasingly places where they're blocking access to certain parts of the internet and demanding that you do ID verifications and things like that, that you may not want to hand those details over to some random website that says you have to do it. Any of those kind of situations, you might want a VPN, a virtual private network. It's the service, it's the app, it's the bit of software that sits between you and the rest of the internet, and it tells the rest of the internet where you are. And if you want it to tell the rest of the internet something that isn't entirely the truth, it'll do that, because sometimes you need that for your own safety, your own security. So it's a little program that sits on your computer, sits on your phone. You can install it with onto up to 10 devices with NordVPN, which is the company that we work with and that we use. And it's extremely easy to use, and it's extremely cheap to get a subscription to as well.
I've spent the morning reading about Burkina Faso and the 6 coups that were there across 21 years. Don't ask me how that happened. There was a thing on Batuta a couple of weeks ago, which is saying that man has 16 tabs of Wikipedia open. Mum took Panadol when she was pregnant. I'm like, well, that's me. That's me. If I were going to Burkina Faso, I'm tipping. I would require a virtual private network to do the things I need to do. The country changed its name from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso, which translates to the land of the honest man. In 1984, when there was a chap called Thomas Sankara, he won via a coup as well. Let's not paint him in, Right. But he arrived via coup, and he departed, shall we say, via coup in 1987 with a bunch of bullets in his back, literally. But he was an interesting cat. He sold the entire Mercedes fleet of the government and replaced it with bikes so that government officials weren't better than anyone else in the community. So strikes me as the kind of guy who, and he implemented a whole bunch of progressive reforms in a country that was poor and remains poor. But anyway, I'm not saying it's because of NordVPN that I was able to learn this on Wikipedia this morning. What I can say is that if I go there one day, and who knows, maybe I will, Jeff, I will take it with me. People will bring their NordVPNs with them when they come to Australia for the Ashes. There'll be so many people listening to this episode right now who are padding up to come to Australia. NordVPN.com/TFW. Don't forget your toothbrush. Don't forget your passport, like I did when I went to the airport going to somewhere last year. And do not forget, absolutely harrowing, when I pounded back up the stairs at 5 o'clock in the morning and Rachel's like, you haven't forgot your fucking passport, have you? I'm like, that's yes, true. I have indeed forgot my passport. And don't forget your NordVPN. Pack your NordVPN with you. Who knows, if you're there at the right time of year, you might be able to come to the Final Word cricket match on the 14th of December in Melbourne, and you can live stream it, perhaps in a more sophisticated way because of your VPN. I don't know. That's probably stretching it. But you know what I'm trying to say? Maybe. There's lots going on the internet during the Ashes summer. Let that be part of your existence with us on the Final Word. Massive discount. Costs minimal to begin with, then a massive discount and a 30-day guarantee, which you'll never need because you'll
few bucks a month, very, very cheap, and it means that you don't get all your data stolen by somebody if you're using some Wi-Fi at the airport or whatever it is. It is a multi-layered security piece of software. Look them up, talk about them, find out about them. Research them yourself. If you want to take the Robert F. Kennedy route, do your own research. But I'm tipping that it will come back in favor of NordVPN. Let's get on with the show. Adam, you have a number. It is from Clifford Nixon. Not sure if that's any relation to, V for Victory. I'm not a crook, but we will find out. Clifford Nixon has sent in a palindromic number, $4.44. It's in AUD. I'm sure I remember a test innings of 444. Is it 05 Ashes? Edgbaston day one. Is it 4:44?
I think it was. It was around that mark. You can look it up. It's obviously stuck in your head. And if it wasn't,
I think that's right.
If your recollection is faulty, like Godwin Gretsch's,
Mm-hmm.
then you can check it out while I tell you Clifford's answer. Hello, Clifford Nixon. That's a great name. I thought Richard Nixon too, because of the way it kind of flows off the tongue. Clifford Nixon, 444 Aussie dollars. Probably not related to Tricky Dicky.
Like if Clifford the big red dog and Richard Nixon had a child.
Yeah, and Richard Nixon suffered from
Nixon, you could fairly describe him as a dog fucker. That would probably be a reasonable way.
Well, he also suffered from the black dog, didn't he? He suffered from significant clinical depression when he was in office. And
imagine how he would have been whitewashed now if he'd okay, if it was now, he just wouldn't have resigned in the first place. He'd just brush it off and carry on. But, if he were resigning in disgrace from the presidency, there'd be like an Instagram post about how, he's had his struggles. He's had his battles with mental health problems. And we really can't judge too harshly the man who sicked the CIA on his domestic political opponents. Who amongst us can judge?
Who amongst us? Interesting, yeah. Interesting how many people of working class backgrounds viewed Nixon as a hero too. He's a fascinating political character. Anyway,
the electoral map is insane when you look at he won everything. I think he won. Yeah. He lost one state when he went up against McGovern.
Yeah, he wasn't seen.
What was McGovern's home state? Was it Massachusetts?
Not sure.
One of those ones in the top right corner. But
right.
He
a New Englander, was he?
Yes, ish. He was like Vermont or Massachusetts or New Hampshire or something.
Well, they're all New Englandy. Oh, they're all New England. Yes. Anyway, so Clifford Nixon, heaps of options here, and they all kind of congregate around one era actually. So 44.41 if we're rounding as a bowling average. That's Pat Pocock's Test bowling average. He played for England between 1968 and 1985. That was a long career that just overlapped with Tom Graveney, who went from 1951 to 1969 and had a batting average of 44.4 or 44.38. So those two had the only two 44.4s in England history for average, one with the bat, one with the ball. And I wondered, well, did they cross over? And they did.
I totally mixed up, by the way, when we were doing the Rebel Tours, the Scab Tours bit. I'm pretty sure I said Tom Graveney was on it when David Graveney was on it.
Oh, right, yeah. So, it would have been hard for Tom to have done so. Yeah, but, that's
wrong era. I've defamed, I've besmirched his reputation. He didn't go.
So they did cross over. The first four Pocock Test matches, when he was kind of in and out of the team, Graveney was in all of them. And I quite like this. In the Manchester Test match of 1968, which, by the way, episode number 242 we're on, aren't we? So 242 is the Test cap number of Johnny Gleeson, who was also playing in that Manchester Test of 1968. Right. I thought I'd come full circle on that, given we were doing that earlier today. So we're still very much in that era in the late 60s. So in the Test at Manchester, when they cross over, it's Pocock's breakthrough performance, taking 6 for 79, albeit in a losing effort. And there is a catch. Court Graveney bowled Pocock, which I thought was quite nice. And who was it? It was none other than Paul Shagger Sheehan. Now, our Shagger Sheehan, Sheehan Arnott, who's, as I think we've said on the program before, probably have said on the show before, he was named Sheehan because his mum's favourite Test cricketer was Paul Sheehan when she was little. So she named him Sheehan in turn. His exploits on Monday deserve comment. We were playing after you and I recorded the weekly show. I went off to play for and captain the cricket.
This could mean anything.
Writers Club or Cricket Media Club. And, I take when needing players for fixtures like this, we take a sort of a broad interpretation of cricket media. Sheehan makes some excellent content for our Sunday team. He's played for the Cricket Writers Club before he was in the team. And he, in the final over of the game out there at Highgate, when the ECB we were playing against, they were sort of around 200 or thereabouts, I said to Sheehan at the start of his final over, keep them under 200 when they were 199, just joking around. Then Sheehan proceeded to take a hat trick to finish it. All beautiful balls, all hit the stumps. And it would have been 4 in 4, a double hat trick, if not for the fact that a tiny inside edge saved it from being 4 wickets in 4 balls to bowl them out, which would have kept them under 200. But yeah, finished with 5 for 27, ends a great season for him. I don't play cricket with anyone as much as I play with the great Shagger. So I thought, given he's been a great friend of the show, that deserved a mention, given it was Shagger.
What's your wicket tally? Just by the way, I haven't asked you.
After 2 wickets that afternoon, I am on 98.
Ooh.
And I have 1 game to go on Sunday.
Okay. All right.
So this is, The math ain't hard. I've got to
I hope
take 2
I hope
wickets.
it's a return catch, and I hope you have a lot of time to think about it. I hope you're hovering under one on 99.
I considered that. I considered that in yoga today. I thought I've taken so many catches off my own bowling this year that the one I put down a couple of ones that have burst through my hands when smacked back at me, but the ones that have been skied, I've kind of taken all of them, right? So that will cross my mind momentarily if one gets skied back.
For you to drop one.
Yeah, it's a declaration game, and we're playing against the Authors, who are another team of mine. So it should mean that, you know, I'm captaining in Sheehan's absence, as it turns out. I'm captaining on Sunday. So I'll be able to, not that I'll construct the game around my thing, we'll play the game, but I can see a world where I'm desperate to get this out of the way early on.
Okay.
I don't want to be carrying this around me all day. Or it won't happen, and it'll be sad, but it won't matter because it's been a really fun season. But the last game of it, 98 going in, maybe it's meant to be. We'll see.
Okay.
I'll let you know on the next episode of The Final Word. Right. Anyway, so that was in 1968. Yes, I wanted to stay in this era, though, because in 1969, there was the debut of cap number 444 for England. That's the real story I'm going to tell you here.
Okay.
About another Scot who captained England. We told you about Jardine, who, you know, was kind of Scottish. Well, the only person born in Scotland who captained England was Mike Dennis. A career that spanned 1969 to 1975 at an international level, and includes, of course, leading them to that thumping loss in Australia in 74-75. But yeah, there's a lot to like this story, which I didn't necessarily realize. And you don't really, do you, when you kind of get the top line on a career, and you might know a couple of nuggets about it. But I had reason to go back and explore the Dennis life, and it's a pretty interesting one. And it's more than just the fact that he's Scottish, although being Scottish is a big part of it. He was born in Bellshill and grew up in Ayr, which is golf country. He was of a tobacco family, and he was kind of like, had he been a little bit older, he probably would have been an amateur. But by the time he was playing, that distinction was largely gone, and he played as a pro. He was already taking the field for the Scottish national team, to the extent to which there was one, as a teenager in school in the 1950s. And E.W. Swanton was told of this kid with vast talent, this tall right-hander who played elegantly and so on. And it was partly on the advice that Swanton gave to Les Ames at Kent that Kent signed him in the early 1960s to go down and move from Scotland and go to Canterbury to play for Kent.
They're unfortunate initials. I haven't actually considered this, but EW, if you've written down, if your name is Ew Swanton, like gross.
Probably
Swanton.
why he went by Jim more than EW.
Yeah.
The man who had the Wisden Almanac in the prisoner of war camp, and would narrate, would reconstruct games of cricket for his fellow prisoners of war. It was his one item that he managed to retain, was a battered old copy of Wisdom. Anyway, I
want a story where someone gets shot, but then they've got the Wisdom Almanac in their breast pocket, and it saves them from,
Yeah, that would have been the time. So Dennis debuts for Kent in 1962. In that debut, he's very much of his time. He's out in the match for Norton 3, both times to Jim Laker. It feels like Jim Laker did stuff like that to people all the time. It would have been tough for a newbie. But by 63, he's on his feet. He reaches 1,000 runs in the first-class season. He's opening the batting with Brian Luckhurst, who went on to open for England, and they do that job from 1964 and beyond. Brian's son, Tim, is the outgoing chair of the Lord's Taverners, and we have a lot to do with Tim. He's a great man. So still playing cricket now. He's, I think he's eligible for the – I'm sorry if I'm getting this slightly wrong, Tim. I think he's eligible for the England over 60s next year, which will be one to keep an eye on. I've got a feeling he mentioned something like that to me. Anyway, going back to Dennis, he had a real presence about him in a big dressing room, right? Colin Cowdrey's the captain, the young Underwood floating around as well. And he's established enough that when Cowdrey isn't playing for England in the late 60s, early 70s, Dennis will be the acting captain for Kent. They win the championship under Cowdrey primarily in 1970, which is a huge deal, and it sets off a remarkable decade for Kent. By 1972, Dennis is made the full-time captain, and they run amok in limited overs cricket. They win 6 trophies between 1972 and 1976 under Dennis's captaincy. So it seems a real glory era at Kent. Championship in 1970, and then 6 trophies in white ball cricket, or not white ball, sorry, limited overs cricket, I should say. It wasn't white ball by then, but the 3 competitions of limited overs cricket that existed in that era, 6 trophies in 4 years.
Is that that's original Cowdrey? Is
That's
that
Colin
Cowdrey
Cowdrey.
Mark 1 or not
Yeah,
Mark
No,
2?
no. This is Colin Cowdrey made his 100th 100 in 1975 against Australia, didn't he? On that trip. So he was still around and visited Australia under Dennis in 74, 75, which we'll come to in just a moment. So his international journey begins in 1969 when he's picked for England to play against New Zealand. He's the sixth Scotsman to play for England, if you define it by who's born there. He makes his debut at Test level at the Oval in the final Test of that 69 summer. Then he goes on to play the rest of the world matches in 1970, which, kind of poorly timed, right? He's made his Test debut, and then the next year, everything blows up with South Africa, and that's kind of it for a while. And he's a bit in and out of the team. He's dropped at one point. And then by 1972-73, they're visiting India. And a sign of his leadership credentials, he was already doing the job at Kent. He was made vice captain. By the September of 1973, he became the full-time captain when replacing Illy. When Raymond Illingworth, who had done such a great job in Australia in 70-71, finished up at the end of 73. That's when Dennis gets invited to become the captain. Now, there are issues that emerge right away with Boycott. Boycott wanted the captaincy.
Really? Issues?
Boycott. Well, we have spoken of this before where like initially Boycott plays under Dennis when they go to the Caribbean and they have a 1-1 series in the Caribbean. But then in 1974, when they're playing against India at home, Boycott mid-series says, fuck it, I'm not playing anymore. And he doesn't play again until 1977 for England. It was always speculated that Boycott sniffed the breeze and knew that Lilly and Thompson were coming that winter. That's always the sort of allegation or the smear at Boycott, that he didn't much fancy going to Australia on that particular occasion. But, he did return and face those same bowlers in 77.
He faced plenty of fast bowlers. For all of the reasonable criticisms that we could make of Boycott, I don't think one that he lacked the ability to or the willingness to face fast bowling is a true or reasonable one.
I think it's more to do with the fact that not so much about the pace and getting hurt or the bravery, more that he might not go so well down there. Anyway, by the by, he's out of Test cricket, Boycott, at the peak of his powers for 3 years, right? That's a really interesting thing that he would do that. And the primary reason he was shitty that Dennis got made captain, not him. But, Dennis was a man of calm. And they liked that about him, which is partly why they picked him with that Australian tour around the corner, knowing it was going to be a pretty rugged one. They did dominate, though, in 1974. They've got Willis and Old, and, it's the golden summer for Dennis. He makes 3 Test hundreds. He's in the Wisden 5 in 1975 to reflect that. So, when they arrive in Australia, it's going to be a tough series, but they've flogged India and Dennis is in top form. And, I suppose they would have arrived feeling relatively buoyant, but reality kicked in fairly soon. His calm was painted as vulnerability as things got worse and worse. Now, they lose 4-1, and then one of the most famous factoids about Dennis, the one that I perhaps knew most about that series, was that he dropped himself after 3 Test matches where he'd made 65 collective runs, or 65 runs collectively, in 6 hits when they were getting flogged. He left himself out for the 4th Test. But then he comes back for the 5th Test when Edridge is injured. John Edridge is injured. And then in the 6th Test match, the final of the series, remembering they were 6 back in that era, he makes in the dead rubber 188 at Melbourne, his highest score in Test cricket. Now, they win that Test by an innings, and I'm not saying that it means an awful lot to win a dead rubber, but there have been many, many, many cricketers who by that point getting absolutely flogged have been 1 foot on the plane. That wasn't Dennis, and I think that indicates that he was made of pretty tough stuff as a cricketer. And then from there, they go home via New Zealand, as was the way back then. They sort of did a bit of a job lot with these tours of Australia and New Zealand. And in a Test over there, he made 181, so a second big 100 in the second half of the Test tours. So that meant that he stayed on as skipper. When he got home, he wasn't immediately sacked. He actually led England at the 1975 World Cup and started the Ashes that immediately followed. However, after 1 Test match, he was totally cooked by the whole experience and he resigned. They needed new blood, which is a reasonable critique at the time, and that's Tony Greig's time to take over the England team, and he remains in that job until World Series cricket. But, Dennis had that Test career that spanned 6 years, and the majority of that, 19 of the 28 times he played for England, he did so as captain. They won 6 of them, drew 5 and lost 8. So there are far worse records out there as England captain. It's worth noting. He made about 1,700 runs at 39.7. So, a healthy average, but not spectacular, commendable. And as were the 400s that he made as a test cricketer. Sticking with Kent, he remained in the captaincy there until 1976 after being dropped by England. That's the end of that juggernaut era of limited overs trophies, the 6 I mentioned before. So he's always been very well regarded, or he always was very well regarded down there at Kent, and what he was able to manufacture as the leader there following Cowdrey. But that didn't end well either. He was kind of moved on as captain in a player vote, which is a bit weird given the success, but whatever. He went to Essex after losing the captaincy, and Essex did the double in 1979, where he was a player, a member of the ranks. So, he ends his...
That would have been sweet. Like if your whole playing ranks vote against you being captain, and then you go somewhere else and win stuff instead.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it was it was a mutiny but there was a vote, and he was and another player won the captaincy for 77, which is why he left. But yeah, 2 years on from that, when he's very much a veteran, they win the championship, Essex, and one of the white ball trophies in 79. And Dennis finishes as a first-class cricketer in 1980 after a massive 501 matches, 26,000 runs, 3,300s, an average of 34. He made 1,000 runs in 14 separate England seasons and half a dozen list day centuries as well. 2 first-class wickets. I always like these guys that have these massive careers and have 1 or 2 wickets. I was asking Nick Knight about this the other week, and he was able to tell me in great detail. I think he's got 2 first-class wickets as well, but one of them was Desmond Haynes, and he's and you can imagine Knighty was able to, in enormous detail, tell the story of when he knocked over Desmond Haynes on 180 or something like that. But yeah, the 2 first-class wickets, one of them was John Steele, the brother of David Steele, who played in that England team in 1975. So I like that. And then in 1976, as part of the International Wanderers trip to South Africa that you talked about a few weeks ago, about how those different tours were interpreted differently. And this was the last of those, wasn't it? The one that Lily went on, and Greg Chappell went on, and a bunch of others, and Richie Bennett was the tour leader, manager. Yep. Well, there was a Chappell versus Turner game on that trip, and Dennis got out Dennis Lilly, the man who'd been his tormentor the previous year in Australia. So I liked that he got Dennis Lilly in a serious game of cricket with the ball. He went back to play second 11 cricket and captained Essex, which again is commendable, right? He's finished and he goes, I'll bring the kids through. I'll captain the 2s. I really like that about him. He stayed on as a outside of the game, working in finance and insurance. Had a varied career. He coached as well. Then he has the redux, if you like. He comes back as a match referee when they begin in the mid-1990s, in 1996, and famously so.
Which is where we know him from. He was such a familiar name. He was the Ranjan Madagale of his time, perhaps.
He certainly was, especially that extraordinarily controversial test match at Port Elizabeth in 2001, which we have done on Storytime years ago, where in PE, it was South Africa hosting India, and a number of Indian players were done for excessive appealing, including Sehwag and Harbhajan. There were 6 players sanctioned all up. Ganguly for not controlling players, some for dissent, and infamously Sachin Tendulkar for ball tampering. So quite odious, the charges for these Indian players, and there's this sense of it's going to be a massive blow up. Sachin, for what it's worth, said he was cleaning the seam. So there's an alternative interpretation of it. And ball tampering is always complicated. I don't want to say that. I don't want to effusively say that anything about this, other than the fact that these are the steps that preceded the blow up. He was accused of ball tampering.
Yes.
He was suspended.
Yes.
The BCCI...
And cleaning the seam is not something you can do unilaterally on your own without talking to an umpire about it.
You need to be doing it in front of the umpire. I think that was all part of it at the time. This is before the era when India ran world cricket, though. So there's a stink. There's absolutely a stink. And then India say that, and he's pilloried in India, but and then they decide to pick
this
the same
is the first
team.
really big flex. This is where India are starting to run, or you can see that they're about to run world cricket. They're becoming the most influential board, and that board says we're not going to play if Mark Dines is the match referee.
Well, it's a bit more than that.
You have to pull him.
Well, it's a bit more than that, because remember, there's a step before that which sort of hints that they weren't as powerful as that, even because the test that's going to play out at Centurion, India pick all the same players, and then the ICC say, no, you don't. So there's a standoff, and the ICC stare down the VCCI. And the result of that is that this is remarkable, by the way. Imagine this happened now.
Yeah.
There's the unofficial test at Centurion where they all do play, and it all fizzled out pretty soon after because Dinesh got sick. He had a heart. He required heart surgery. So for all of the vitriol at the time, things backed off when this test had been played. Well, this unofficial test match had been played, and he was done by 2002 as a match referee. And clearly,
and that's the one that's the test with poor old Connor Williams, who debuts for India in that test and then never gets an official cap after that.
Yeah. But it's worth remarking on again that, the scenario upon having players suspended by the ICC and then saying, well, fuck it, we're going to play the same team anyway. And then the ICC needing to step in and say, well, this test won't be sanctioned by the ICC. I mean, imagine a team tried to pull a stunt like that now. But anyway, that's I suppose this was a generation ago or thereabouts. So
it's the first real test of it, because that's when Joel Morgan Dalmir, I think, is running cricket in India, and he's the one who really leads that push to go, well, we're not going to accept the powers that be anymore. We're going to become the powers that be, and this is that first real big push where they go, well, we're not going to recognise that these suspensions are valid. The accusation was that they were racist. They were it was racist to cite the Indian players when other players weren't being cited for other things. And so that was the position that Dinesh was put in, was basically being accused of having racially motivated, brought charges for that reason. So, that is essentially the last time that the BCCI is overruled by the ICC on something and doesn't get their way, but the future clashes that that happen after that point, the power base shifts each time.
Yeah, the direction of travel is probably pretty clear at this point when looked at in hindsight. Dinesh doesn't get retained as a match referee from 2002 onwards, so he's kind of done in that capacity. But then he goes on to the committee at Kent. He actually leaves the committee in a blow-up, but returns as the chair in 2012, but unfortunately by this stage he's quite ill. He's got cancer, so he's only the chair for 1 year. He's made an OBE. He was given an OBE, awarded an OBE, I should say, in 2013, but that's also the year when he passes away at age 72. Kent legend, England trier, did what he believed, inaugural Scotland Hall of Fame member back where it all began, and the only Scot to captain England, an unusual path that was his alone and remains his alone. Mike Dinesh, who was the 444th man to represent England in Test cricket. Jeff.
Thank you, Adam. One more break, because we have to have two. That's what the contract says. And if you don't want to have the automatic breaks, you join up on Patreon, and one of the perks that you get is the version of the feed that doesn't have the automated ads in it. Let's
do that. Let's remind people that you can, it's a good point about I don't think we make it enough about the automated ads. If you don't like the little 30-second jobbies, join Patreon. If you want to help fund the show, join Patreon. If you want to join an amazing community, join Patreon. You want to run the marathon in Edinburgh next year, or the half marathon or the 10K, join Patreon. You want to play for the final word 11 cricket matches at Melbourne or Sydney or London or Wormsley or whatever it is, join the Patreon. Like it all roads lead towards this wonderful thing that makes this so special. I've had reason to pause and think about Patreon a bit more in the last few weeks in relation to, ringing around and thanking some people for their contributions over time. It is a special thing. So help us get to Bradman if you've been on the fence and thinking about it and listening to us for a long time, or maybe you're a new listener. Join the Patreon.
Or maybe you were on it 5 years ago and you dropped off. Well, we'd like to have you back.
Yeah.
A stat is a stat, and to get to 974, we're going to need all the stats we can get.
And also send this on to other people. That's the other thing. Send the show to, there's that rate review thing that people do. We're not very good at that, but review us, give us a 5-star. That all helps. But so does sending the podcast on to people who might enjoy it and all the other bits and bobs. And the fact that we've got a book coming out about Storytime this year, that's a pretty cool thing.
Just pinch your friend's phone and just subscribe. Just find their podcast app and hit subscribe, and then they'll find it in the feed and they'll go, oh yeah, I'll give this a listen, and they might enjoy it. Break time. We'll be back in a second.
This is Storytime 242 with Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon. Last segment coming up here. A quick nod to our pals at Lacuna Sports. Focus on your game. Lacuna has your kit covered. Great response to this, Jeff, the Lacuna. We've been doing it obviously on the daily shows, and so many people have been in touch already to say that they're thrilled that we're working with Lacuna. I don't think we've ever had a response quite like it, actually.
It's a natural fit. It's
people
a
are like,
natural
oh,
fit.
this is great. I mean, obviously on the show we do all sorts of different things, but to have a brand that's so directly linked to growing the game, to making sure that women and girls have the best opportunity to feel comfortable when playing, to therefore stay in the sport. Hopefully this will be the sort of thing that gets more clubs engaged on this part of the story, given that Lacuna were first in the industry and have done so much great work. It's a great link. So yeah, I just wanted to say that it's been a perfect first week with them.
We are very happy to have them. It's nice when something completely aligns with what you're trying to do, what we're trying to do on this show. And what we're trying to do on this show as well is finish it. So we've got 2 more numbers to go. Rahul Venkat back again, one of our longest running pledges. Rahul been on the Storytime tiles since the very early years. $2.97 in the USD. Adam, tell them the clue.
Yes, here we go. Hope you're doing well, says Rahul. We are indeed. Updated my number to 297, so that's 2.97 in American currency. This is about one of my favourite matches from my childhood. This was one of the most anticipated clashes before the IPL came along. Think Australia versus Australia A Energy, right up Adam's alley. I had a shirt sent to me during the week online of the Australian 94-95 shirt, not the Australia A, the Australian shirt by Chris Holt, one of our Edinburgh team. And that was going on vintage for 200 quid. This market is red hot. It would be triple that if it were an Australia A shirt, believe you me. But yes, I like where he's going with this. I'm looking forward to seeing where you take it. Before the IPL came along, one of the most anticipated clashes, this must be an India or Pakistani type thing would be my guess. Anyway, see where you go with it.
It's got to be an India, well, it could be an India A, or it could be something if we go all the way back to 2003. Okay. September 2003, Adam. India, the national team, I would say still pretty upset about the World Cup final. Took that sting lasted a long time. And they didn't play very much between then and now. So they played a few one-dayers in Bangladesh in a tri-series with South Africa, made the final of that, got washed out. That's the only cricket that the national men's team have played after the World Cup final when Ricky Ponting callback touches them up. So they have a test series against New Zealand coming up, and then they're going to go to Australia for 2003-04 when Ponting will make the 242. Everything in this week's episode is linking together. It's beautiful. I love it. Done. I love how this works sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, they want to prepare. They want good preparation for the national team. Okay. So they turn to the Irani Cup or the Irani Trophy. It's variously gets called both and either. Neither one is wrong specifically, but it depends who's sponsoring it and all the rest of it. So the Irani Trophy, you might not be familiar with it. You might know about the Ranji. You might know about the Dulip. The Irani Trophy is another one of these ones that pops up. Is it named after former England all-rounder Ronnie Irani?
They're naming. I like the fact that they named a trophy after Ronnie Irani, if nothing else. This is the era when Ronnie Irani was kind of bashing around still, wasn't he? He was in Australia in 2003 and famously with Mark Waugh, teammates from Essex, when Steve Waugh was making his 100 to end all hundreds at the SCG to save his career, 10,000th run and all of that. Mark Waugh and Ronnie Irani weren't there when he brought up his 100. They were at the trots across the road. They got out of there and got an early finish to I think it was Harold Park Trots, wasn't it? Where they were when Steve Waugh brought up his 100 and crashed it into the Brawongle stand last ball of the day.
He was in the one-day team on that tour. Ronnie Irani didn't play a test, but running and bowling those little mediums, and maybe he took like 3 for it at the SCG, something like that. It's not named after Ronnie Irani. You'll be shocked. You'll be very, very surprised to know. But it's named after a long-time Indian administrator in the way that things were back then, who was invited to join the administration of the BCCI by Anthony de Mello, who also got a trophy named after him for a while. The de Mello Trophy was the one between England and Australia before they superseded that with the Anderson Tendulkar, which also replaced the Patowdy one. So there used to be 2 trophies between India and England. Now there's one. They've been combined. Right. So, but Mr. Irani had a 17-year stint as secretary, then took a couple of years off, and then had a 13-year stint as secretary, and then became president or chair. Can't remember which one of those two for a few more years. Basically, just did it forever.
I was going to say, is this a Putin Medvedev type thing where he's done it for a time till its time was up, handed it to the other guy and came straight back and did it some more?
I don't know. I like to think he just got bored. I like to think he went, I've done enough. I'm moving on. It was the late 40s, World War II's ended. Time to do something else. Maybe had a different career, tried his hand as a mango farmer or something. And then his country called, duty called. And a couple of years later, he said, I'll come back for another 13 years in the gig and then become the It is president. That's right. So it's 1966 when he becomes the president. So a few years before that, 1960, when he's already been around the trap since it's the 1920s when he first comes on board. So he's there for a very, very long time. They have the 25th anniversary of the Ranji Trophy. Now, you know how I love a 25th anniversary. 25 test caps.
25 caps.
Presentation.
Yeah.
There you go, Jack Leach. James Anderson's going to present that to you in his 172nd test match or something.
I just can't believe, whose idea was that? Even now I see that the players must be a little bit embarrassed by having cap prezos for the 25th.
Come on.
They must 25. Be like, really? Do we need to do it with the cameras and the 100, obviously. And look, even 50, fine. 50 tests is an amazing achievement. It's something about the 25 and 75 that just doesn't.
And 125?
It just, 125,
come on.
Yeah, whatever. I think when you're at that point, whatever, it doesn't really matter anymore. But it's something about the 25, that particular presentation that grinds the old gears in my brain.
Cringe. They play 25 tests a year. You just need to be in the team for 12 months.
Playing 25 tests is a terrific achievement. No one's disputing. Chris Rogers played 25 test matches. What a great thing that, 25 tests.
Ed Cowan played 25 test matches.
No one's disputing, but a special cap presentation. Imagine Bucky. In his 25th test, he would have told him to fuck off. He would have said, "No, this is not. This is not
embarrassing. You are embarrassing me in front of my friends. Do not do, and especially when it's
Mum, don't make me wear that t-shirt.
Especially when they give you a special hat. They're like, oh, you got 25. Here's your special hat. Oh, it's got little piping on it. Oh, look, it's like the regular hat, but it's got a little colourful piping. Or we stitched some pipe cleaners onto it. We went down to the art and crafts room and we dug around through the cupboard and then they super glued some pipe cleaners on it. It's like some embarrassing shit that your kid makes at school and then comes back and gives it to you and then you have to put it on the fridge for the next 15 years.
We are in that era. We are in that era. Although I will
say,
you're
going to have some macaroni artworks decorating your house.
Our fridge, Rach has to very carefully shuffle the deck a little bit so that Winnie doesn't know what's been taken off the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
But she's quite savvy. She's a good drawer. I think she'll be an artist actually, for what it's worth. And now she's got now she's developing her skills. But yes, you're right.
But people say you got to encourage kids. I think you can go too far. I think sometimes they're encouraged too much. And if she's going to become an artist, great. Become an artist. When you've drawn something that's actually good, we'll put that up. I'm not going to put your macaroni fucking self-portrait. Oh, here's the family. That's a dog. That's not a dog. That's a piece of spaghetti. You just glued it onto a piece of paper. It's not that difficult. I'm not going to lull you into thinking the world is nicer than it is. The world is an easier place to live in than it is by telling you that this is a good piece of artwork. This is not. This has no aesthetic value. Improve your creative practice. Make that fuel to improve. This is my message to the children of the world. Get better. Right.
Good spray. Play on.
Okay.
Where are we?
Okay, so 25th anniversary of the Ranji Trophy. That's where we are. They decide to celebrate that by having the Ranji winning team play a rest of India team for the first time, and this is what they decide to name after Mr. Irani, the Irani Cup. Right, and it's supposed to be a one-off. It's Bombay at first. A couple of our favourites are playing. So Polly Umrigar is playing for Bombay. ML Jaisma, the stylish cravat-wearing stroke player, is playing for the rest of India. They both make tons. And it starts off the pattern of Bombay/Mumbai playing in the final. They played in almost half of the 60-odd Irani Cup games that have been played so far because they win the Ranji Trophy a lot. And it's about 50-50 historically on the rest of India team winning or whoever the state champion team is winning up to this point in history. So it becomes an annual fixture almost every year. I think they scotched it during COVID maybe, but it's been played most years since its inception. And this one in 2003, this is a serious heavyweight battle because they want good preparation for this, for the Indian national team. Mumbai have made the final again. Sachin Tendulkar's the captain of Mumbai. He's got his old school friend Vinod Kambli in there with him. He's got Wasim Jaffer opening the batting. He's got Ajit Agarkar and Sairaj Bahutale, one of your favourites who played in that 2001 series and got Mark Waugh out, I reckon. Was he the one who gets Mark Waugh LBW in the...
That's stretching me, but yes, it's one of those names that is synonymous with one series and one series.
Plays the third test, I reckon.
Test.
I think he plays only the third test.
He's out at the end. Yep.
Good name, satisfying to say. Aggarkar's batting at 6 in this team, by the way, and Bahutale, the leg spinner, is batting at 7. So, interesting when you first look at the card. That's the Mumbai team. The rest of India team, Adam, is basically just the Indian Test team. They've gone, fuck it, we're picking everybody. So Sanjay Bangar is opening with Virender Sehwag. Dravid and Laxman are 3 and 4. Ganguly's 5. Yuvraj Singh, a young Yuvraj at 21 years old, is at 6. Another of your favourites, Party Patel, ain't no party like a Party Patel party, is the keeper. Kumble and Harbhajan, the spinners. Zahir Khan and your other all-time favourite, Lakshmapati Balaji, are the seamers, right? This is a fair dinkum cricket team, because some of the rest of India teams are a bit whatever. They're a bit Dirk Nannis breaking Tim Payne's hand. They're a bit whatever. It's like whoever's available, or pick someone who's at the end of their career and going out, give them a little show party, pick a couple of up-and-comers. It's not PM's 11, but they're not necessarily picking the absolute best players in the country. They're picking the best available players in the country. And on this occasion, everyone is available. So it's a huge deal. All eyes are on this match. People are very, very excited about this game. It's got the glitz, it's got the glamour, and it's got Tendulkar versus Dravid, Laxman, Ganguly. All of this, these players are all huge deals at the time. And they get a green top in Chennai. Adam, it is possible. You can get a green wicket in Chennai. They've got pace selections in the rest of India team, so they want to give them something to work with. Rest of India are bowling on the first day. They make the running. So Mumbai have an okay opening stand. And then Sanjay Bangar breaks that opening partnership. And then Balaji and Zahir Khan, who've been bad early, come back in their second spells and they go hard. They get it right. They're bringing the slip cordon into play. They reduce Mumbai to 5 for 98. Tendulkar's still there, though. And he's got Bahutale, who's the leggy. I said he was batting at 7, but he's got a quite good first-class record with the bat. Averages 32 with the bat. So
wasn't he there at the end of the chase at Chennai?
With
he was batting at the end. Was he batting at the end?
I think he is with Mongia, Nayan Mongia, the keeper.
Yeah. Mongia was
7 down or 8 down. I think he gets out. Harbhajan is there.
Harbhajan winning runs.
Close.
No, you're right. Harbhajan winning runs. Yeah.
But Bahutale gets out before that, and that's what makes it 8 down, I'm going to say.
It's funny, like, again, you said at the start of the show, there are things you remember. Like, I feel like there was a moment, there's a time in my life I could run through all of these things without even thinking, but now I probably need to consult the scorecard. Anyway, please continue. You've
got to remember where other parts of the world are. So, right. They've got this situation where Bahutale, he made 9 first-class hundreds, right? He could bat low 30s average. Even Aggarkar's got like a 28 first-class average. So decent players, right? And Sachin is going along nicely. They bat together for a long while. Sachin's on 86, smokes a pull shot off Zahir Khan, smokes another one, goes to 94, and then he has a flay through the offside and he edges to Dravid and he's caught. He's out for 94. Zahir's 4th wicket. Zahir finishes up with 5 for 77. Kumble takes the new ball and gets Bahutale out for 58. And the next morning, there's a guy called Robin Morris, Adam, who makes 31, smacks it around, and gets them up to 297, which is the pledge. And that's a pretty decent score after 5 for 100. Rest of India reply, Robin Morris, bowling seam, takes an early wicket. This is an interesting one, because anytime you see an Anglo name on a Ranji scorecard, that's a curious one, right? Like Connor Williams earlier. And there are Anglo-Indians who have those sort of names. It's not like it's unheard of, but it's a little unusual. And so I was looking up Robin Morris.
Yeah, like it's a hark back to the old pentangular tournaments and quadrangular tournaments, and when you'd have the
Parsis and
the Parsis and the Europeans and obviously the Hindus and the Muslims and so on. Simpler times, probably not simpler times, but from a first class scorecard perspective, interesting times.
Well, Robin Morris, interesting times could be the title of his book. Varying sources. Some say he was born in Canada. Some say he was born in India. You'd guess that he's got mixed ancestry. If that were the case, not too sure. But this is his final first-class game for Mumbai, is this Rest of India game. Things don't go so well after this. He plays the ICL for a while, the Indian Cricket League, the Renegade League, gets banned, comes back when they've got the amnesty. And then Robin Morris is the one who's in the Al Jazeera video hooking up the pitch doctoring in Sri Lanka in 2016. Remember the sting, the match-fixing sting, where they've got the Sri Lankan groundsman who cooked the pitch when Australia played at Gaul in 2016. Robin Morris is the guy talking up the groundsman's work. He's saying, well, this bloke, he'll make you an absolute shit tip that will end the test in 2.5 days if you want. You just got to pay him enough money. Robin Morris is the guy he's the salesman for this.
That was the was that the Al Jazeera documentary? That's when that ended up.
Which had its shortcomings, but this bit stood up better than others. Robin Morris's version was that Al Jazeera asked him to be in a film and he was playing a fictional role when he was trying to. I don't know if this was ever, if charges were laid. So I'm not going to say that he did it, but I'm going to say that he was accused of it.
Just play a match fixer for us, please. We'll video it and we'll bring his org and all that. But
And he's like, no worries, I'll do that. I'm happy to do that. I don't see any downside to agreeing to do this. Right. Anyway, later, like more recently, he was arrested for being an illegal IPL bookie, taking bets on the IPL. And he was also arrested for kidnapping a guy who he was trying to get a loan from, and then trying to get some money off this dude. And so, kidnapped him outside his place of business.
You want to give me some money.
Right.
No cash here, chopper.
Again, don't know if he was convicted of any of these things, but he has been accused of a quite long list of crimes, basically, to this point. So who knows what Robin Morris was on about. Anyway, he has an influence in this game, in his final match, picks up a wicket early, and then Ramesh Pawar, the off-spinner who later became the Indian women's coach, he's bowling well. Agarkar's taking wickets. The Indian stars aren't making runs. Sehwag's out for 16. Lakshman faces 53 balls to make 5 and then gets out. Ganguly makes a duck. Dravid makes 41 and then he gets caught sensationally. Tendulkar at mid-wicket takes an absolute screamer, diving catch away to his right and hangs on to it. So Tendulkar wants it. He's captaining Mumbai and he is throwing himself at this. He's almost made a ton in the first innings. He takes this catch. The third innings, he's building the lead. Sachin, he gets up to 50, smokes an off drive to get to 50, and then flicks a catch to square leg, and he's out. Zahir Khan gets him for a second time. He's the 6th to fall. The lead's only about 200. And then Ramesh Pawar walks in down the order and goes, oh, well, I'll just have a go. And he whacks 4 boundaries in his first 10 balls and then goes on in that vein, makes 57. Sairaj Bahutale makes another 36. Agarkar makes 22. They all chip in. They set 340 to win, take the first couple of wickets relatively early, and Balaji, your fave, comes in as night watchman, keeps going the next day, faces 126 balls to make 26 runs, bats for 3 hours, almost 3 hours, and intersperses Dravid and Lakshman. So Dravid gets settled. Lakshman comes in and starts playing shots. Dravid makes a ton. Lakshman goes to 99 and then he's caught at bat pad on the offside. They're 3 for 291. So they're 49 runs short at this stage. And then Lakshman gets out to Bahutale. He's the 4th wicket. Dravid nicks one onto his pad, gets held by the keeper. He's out. Yuvraj hits one to point. He's out. Pardeep Patel, first ball, short leg. He's out. They've lost 4 for bugger all. They're still 28 short. They've got 3 wickets in hand. Zahir and Harbhajan waiting to come in after Kumble, and suddenly it's on again and all the excitement is back. And can Mumbai hold them off? And Ganguly and Kumble are cribbing the runs and throwing the bat and trying to do what they can. And gradually they make these last 28 runs. They get there with 3 wickets in hand. It's a finish that has the country captured, and it's a very rare loss for Sachin Tendulkar captaining Mumbai because he tended to win most of those games. And that is why I think Rahul Venkat would remember that story with such fondness, because when the entire Indian team rocked up for ROI, except for Tendulkar, and went, let's go 11v1, and some other players chipped in along the way. But that was maybe the last time that the Irani Cup or the Irani Trophy was really at the absolute best of the best.
I'm glad Bahutale was there towards the end as well. Such a satisfying name to say in commentary. I'm tipping if it was a footballer, Bahutale would have been a nice alternative career for him. Beautiful. Thank you, Jeff. Your second answer there for Rahul Venkat. I've got one to come as well. 1 ball left in the over. It'll be bowled for Jill. She's new. Yep. She's heard the call. She's answered the call. She said, I'm going to hit the button. Because in 1915, my country said no. Because we said on the show, can you please join Patreon? 588, it's in US dollars, which means nothing because that's the default currency. What where I know she is from is informed by the clue, which is very much English. Jeff, read the clue for me.
Brief, there may only have been Trent Bridge and the Oval, but there will always be Lords.
Damn straight. Good clue.
There will always be in England.
Yes, there's a bit
If
going
I should
on
die,
here.
I think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England.
Well, these grounds, what we're looking at here is someone who had an involvement in Trent Bridge and the Oval, and then obviously Lords as well, and it ties in nicely in a very sad story, but one that I think over time has been recalibrated to a certain point. Ben Hollyoak's Test Caps 588, and what this refers to is the fact that we'll always have Lords, and that's his one-day debut from 1997 against Australia, which I feel like I've watched this on YouTube a dozen times in the last 5 years. It just seems to come up.
We've definitely talked about this innings on the show before.
So. We have, and it deserves another run through, and I'll get to that in a sec. But yeah, it sort of feels like he's still even now spoken of in sort of hushed tones, and was way back when. And yeah, I
think because so many of his contemporaries are still so prominent in cricket media, so that sadness hasn't moved on in the way that it might have if that generation had moved on, of Hussain and Atherton and Butcher, and particularly Butcher, Mark Butcher, being a teammate and all the rest of it.
The song when he passed away, didn't he?
Yeah, there's a very intense emotional connection. And
Butch referred to it when we interviewed him years ago now, but about the song that he wrote when coming back from New Zealand, when that death, and we'll go to the death in a sec. But yeah, like I think because my brother's called Ben and I'm called Adam, like Adam and Ben, you're taken out of the interest in these things when you're a kid growing up, and the fact that they're Australian as well, well, broadly speaking, Australian, having an Australian father, and yeah, we've told the story before, and we've referred to it with Butch as well. But to recap. What he did and where he fitted in. He was born on Remembrance Day in 1977 in Melbourne. His dad was an engineer who'd been in Australia for generations. His brother Adam was 6 years his elder and was raised mostly in Ballarat. They ended up in England for a couple of years, then they were in Hong Kong for a while, and they were back in Perth where Ben went to Wesley College. And it was in the time they were in Australia before, though, in Sydney, where he took 9 for 13 in an under-12s game, which, it's an indication of someone who's pretty special if they're doing things like that at such a young age. In 1994, when he was 17, he's already been signed by Surrey to join his brother, who'd been there for a few years and established by that point, nearly captain by 94. And he made his first-class debut in 1996. He won one of those Compton Awards for Best Young Player at Surrey in 1996, back when they were a bit of a thing where every county gave out a Best Young Player in the Compton name. And then May 1997 comes around when he's only 19, and he's called up to the one-day squad to make his debut against Australia at Lords in a one-day international. There's a nice line here. Mike Atherton was captain, asked him that morning whether he fancied going in at number 3. And Atherton's words, he shrugged and said in his own laconic way, yeah, he'll give it a go. And I think that's, sort of sums up the way he is interpreted as someone who was laconic and had this ease about him. And that applied absolutely that famous day at Lords when he walked in at number 3 early on, and it's just perfection to this point, truly. The day is glorious. The sun is beating down, spring afternoon, and he hits this gunshot on drive from Glenn McGrath to get off the mark. It's absolutely glorious, and a booming cover drive off the same bowler. This is Glenn McGrath we're talking about here. Some of the most stunning shots you will see. That cover drive off McGrath is an absolute stunner. Again, 19 here, right?
And it's in an era where it's almost how dare you, because McGrath intimidates teams so much. There's the Abdul Razak bit where he hits 5 boundaries in an over in 99, 2000.
Yep.
That's there's that, and there's the Hollyoak bit, and there aren't many others until Peterson takes him down in 05.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, they're chasing 270. It's again the quirk of this. It's the last season in England where they wore whites and for one-day cricket and had red balls and that type of thing. But so they've got to go for it. But still, it's the way in which he's taken to the task. Mark Nicholas on BBC commentary. What a stunning strike! It's that complete freedom that he's enjoying, and everyone's glued to this innings. He clips 4 more through the onside like he is Mark Waugh, except that he's Ben Hollyoak and he's a teenager and he's facing Glenn McGrath. He dances at him in the same over, inside out, over cover, nearly for 6. Does the same thing to Kaspovic in the next over cover. It's almost like from another era watching this. Like it's like, and by that I mean like if you were watching it now, it would be normal. Back then, this was not normal. You did not charge against some of the best fast bowlers in the world and the inside out them over cover. That wasn't a thing. That's IPL and T20 informed cricket that we see in 2025. You did not see that in 1997, especially at the start of a one-day innings. Then Shane Warne comes on, first ball. Remember I said he hit Glenn McGrath for on drive to get off the mark. A drive that's just as good from Warne's first delivery that he's faced of him in professional cricket. And on drive for 4, complete control. Then he lap sweeps his second ball off Warne for 3, so clever as well. The first ball he faces from Jason Gillespie's clipped away as well, and he's up to 50 in no time at all. The crowd's in raptures. He pulls Warne for another boundary. The 100's up for England. He celebrates that by launching Warne, enormous 6. It nearly goes into father time, deep right up the back of the tavern stand. It's a massive 6. Unfortunately, he's out shortly thereafter, caught a backward point by Steve Waugh for 63 from 48 balls. But it did, in its own way, represent something about what the future of England cricket could look like. And then when he won a game for Surrey in similar circumstances later in that season, they vaulted him into the Test 11 as well to make his debut alongside his brother Adam at Trent Bridge, which is in the clue. A test that ultimately Australia won to claim to regain the Ashes. But it's worth remembering that it was 1-1 going into the 4th test, and it's the 4th of 6. So, it wasn't a done thing, and they're trusting these two Hollyoake brothers to come in. Third set of brothers to debut for England together. The others were the Graces and the Hearns. So, again, it's something that's quite rare. And he was the youngest England debutant since Brian Close when he debuted at 18 years of age in 1949. Mm-hmm. And he did well in his debut. He did commendably. He got Greg Blewett caught behind. He made 28 in his first innings. He got Mark Taylor in the second inning. It's all pretty promising, so much so that all the new Botham stuff's totally into overdrive, as you might imagine, in the press, despite the fact that they've lost the Ashes. There's this shining light. And then weirdly doesn't play the Oval Test match, the last of the series. He's left out, which would have been a nice thing given that England go on to win at the Oval. Phil Tufnell's recalled and bowls out Australia in a narrow 4th innings chase, and it's a really iconic moment of that series that they finally beat Australia. They beat them at the start of the series at Edgbaston and the end of the series in South London. He only got one more test match, Ben Hollyoake. That was against Sri Lanka at his home ground of the Oval 12 months later. He was Murali twice in that test when Murali took, was it 15 or 16 in the test match? Something absurd like that.
16.
So 16.
Yep.
And that's it for Ben Hollyoake's test career, sadly. I mean, he did win the county championship, though, in 1999, so he continued to have a prominent role in Surrey's red ball team. But he was young, and of course there were going to be slips along the way. Of course he was going to lose his spot. That was the way these things went. He did get back into the England one-day team. He played 20 one-day internationals, but he was never better than that first day, that first gorgeous innings at Lords in the May of 1997 that's so often spoken of. And then the tragedy of March 2002 when his car crashed right near that school, Wesley, where he went after they'd been at a family function. I think the story at the time was that his family were in a car behind him. It's all very horrible, very, very horrible stuff that he slipped when going off the down a slip lane, and the car just lost control. There was nothing untoward about what was going on. It's just one of these freak things that can happen when you're driving. And there he was, dead at age 24, the youngest ever England Test player to pass away. Alex Stewart said at the funeral that he was the most naturally gifted cricketer he'd ever played alongside. Nasser Hussain came back from New Zealand for it. And of course, there's that Graham Thorpe double 100 over there that Mark Butcher told us about, and the song that was sung at the funeral as well. And there was a lot of references to Ben Hollyoake when Philip Hughes passed away in 2014 at age 26. And these, very, very tragic reference points, kind of that idea of how can this possibly be that someone with so much still to come is cut down so young. And it's still prominent now at Surrey, even now, there's a lot of Ben Hollyoake around the ground. He's never been lost to that place entirely, far from it.
No.
There are still awards
and it is that
link
with Stewart as well, and his influence at Surrey. And I think that when you're young and someone young dies, they're like a contemporary dies, it feels impossible and shocking. When you're a bit older and more jaded and young people die, it's always worse. It always feels you feel it more keenly. But I suppose you come to learn that this does happen, and the impossibility of it is less. But because they were younger when this happened, that stays with them in this way, that even though they're now older people, they still feel the freshness of that hurt, that they carry it in the same way that it hurt them when they were young.
Yeah, unquestionably, I think. And the very fact that Adam Hollyoake remained the captain at Surrey and they won the championship that year in 2002, and dedicating the championship to his brother, and it's kind of, I found it difficult writing this out. It's like kind of thinking and conceiving of someone dying so young, and Cap 588 Ben Hollyoake, that won Spring Day in 1997, an eternal memory of an incredibly gifted cricketer who was taken far too soon.
A test cap number and a one-day moment being the thing that people remember most vividly, and I'm sure that's why that number's related to that, and that sort of story has come up on the show because a few times before, because people they carry it with them in that way. That is story time. That's our note to end the show for the week. If you've been listening and you've enjoyed it, thank you very much. Get involved if you want to. There's a nice community of people who are telling these stories and sharing these stories and having these moments as well. So you can look to get more involved with that if you want to get in touch with us in any way that you can.
I should say, if you don't follow us on all the social media platforms, do that as well. And actually, while we've been recording, has just posted a video of me planting slabs of the Lord's turf in my backyard a couple of days ago. We just put the video up now. I'm not sure how it's come up. I'm sure it's lovely, but where we were gifted that turf, and Rachel and I have now planted 2 slabs of the Lord's ground in our garden, which was perhaps more. It was perhaps slightly harder work than we thought it was going to be.
You're going to have to get good at grass though, because if if that doesn't make it, if the transplant doesn't work, we've been
sad. Watering it a lot, and it's going to be we're now going to do a full reno of the garden. We're going to level the grass and go again, and hopefully that grass takes hold so we can lift the whole thing to the next thing. Anyway, point being is that's on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and all that. Just follow us everywhere, because we're obviously, the more we grow in that area, the better for the podcast and everything we've talked about today around Patreon and sponsorship and so on. And we're giving it our best shot. This is our lives these days. So how you can back us in, it's always appreciated. And all that's left to do is to wish you all a nice weekend. This has been Storytime 242. We'll catch you again very soon.
Bye-bye.